Listen up, because the landscape of the secondary firearms market has completely flipped. If you spend any amount of time hanging around the used gun counters or browsing the local trader forums, you already know exactly what I am talking about. The days of treating your everyday carry or your range toy like a high-yield savings account are officially over. A few years back, we lived in a chaotic seller's paradise where anything with a firing pin commanded a massive premium. Today, we are staring down a brutal buyer's market. I am not talking about no-name budget blasters imported from overseas. I am talking about industry titans. We are looking at highly respected platforms that used to command top dollar, but have now become absolute inventory poison for gun stores. Between massive leaps in manufacturing innovation, normalized supply chains, and an economy that has everyone tightening up their discretionary spending, certain guns have just lost their footing. As an instructor and someone who tracks these industry shifts daily, I am here to give you the harsh reality. If you have one of these sitting in your primary safe, do not shoot the messenger. Here are 10 weapon systems that have hemorrhaged their resale value as we push forward into 2026. Number 10. Heritage Rough Rider. Starting off our bottom 10 is a revolver we have all seen a million times, the Heritage Rough Rider. Let us be honest. There is a very specific charm to picking up a single-action rimfire that costs about the same as taking your family out to a decent dinner. It is a fantastic tool to teach a brand new shooter the fundamentals of marksmanship. It gives you that classic cowboy aesthetic without demanding you take out a second mortgage for a true Colt. But as far as resale equity in 2026 goes, this gun is a total dead end. The primary issue is sheer market saturation. During the massive buying surges of the last few years, distributors were pushing these things out by the shipping container. People scooped them up, ran a few cylinders of .22 long rifle through them, and then tossed them in the back of the safe. Now, everyone wants to offload them, and the math simply does not work in the seller's favor. When a brand new Rough Rider regularly goes on retail promotion for $100, nobody is going to buy your used one. Once a buyer factors in the federal background check and the local FFL transfer fee, your second-hand revolver ends up costing them more than a brand new one. You will be lucky to trade this thing for a firm handshake. Number 9. Mossberg Patriot. Moving down the list to number 9, we have to talk about the Mossberg Patriot. Do not get me wrong here. When it comes to pump-action defensive shotguns, Mossberg is absolute royalty. Platforms like the 500 and the 590 are legendary for a reason. But their attempt to dominate the entry-level bolt-action rifle market has hit a brick wall. The Patriot was intended to be the ultimate working-class deer rifle. It was built to get the job done in the woods without breaking the bank. The problem is that the entire budget bolt gun sector has advanced light years in the past 3 years. When you put a Patriot next to a Ruger American Gen 2, the differences are night and day. The Patriot suffers from incredibly loose bolt tolerances, and that injection-molded plastic stock feels cheap the second you shoulder it. Today's consumer expects threaded barrels, rigid chassis systems, and precision triggers right out of the cardboard box. Gun stores are currently flooded with used Patriots chambered in classic hunting rounds like .30-06 and .270. Because they sit on the used racks for months on end, dealers are offering absolute pennies on the dollar for trade-ins. Number 8. Marlin, 1895. Number 8 is a tough pill to swallow for the traditionalists. The Marlin, 1895. Specifically, the model's chambered in .45-70 government. If we rewind the clock just 3 years, this was arguably the most sought-after long gun in the country. The tactical lever action craze was firing on all cylinders. Every shooter wanted a stainless guide gun decked out with modern rails, tactical slings, and heavy suppressors. You had to pay well over retail just to secure one. But the bubble has officially burst in 2026. The biggest factor is Ruger's complete overhaul of the Marlin brand. Ruger is currently manufacturing lever guns with a level of quality control that completely embarrasses the older, pre-acquisition models. That overnight leap in quality completely destroyed the collector's value of the older iterations. Furthermore, the reality of running a big-bore cartridge has finally hit the consumer's wallet. When you are paying $3 to $4 per squeeze of the trigger for .45-70 government, range days get very short. A lot of folks bought the hype, bruised their shoulders, drained their checking accounts, and immediately put the gun on consignment. Number 7. Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. Sitting at number 7 is a former heavyweight champion that simply got lapped by modern engineering. The first-generation Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. When this subcompact hit the scene way back in 2012, it completely revolutionized the everyday carry market. It was the absolute benchmark for concealability and reliability. But in the tactical world, nostalgia does not win gunfights, and it certainly does not hold monetary value. The era of the single-stack 9mm is dead and buried. We are living in the age of the micro-compact, dominated by platforms like the SIG P365. There is zero tactical advantage to carrying a firearm that takes up the exact same footprint inside your waistband, but only gives you half the ammunition capacity. Once Smith & Wesson dropped the Shield Plus, featuring a heavily upgraded trigger and a double-stack magazine, the fate of the Gen 1 was sealed. Shooters abandoned the original Shield in droves. You can walk into literally any used gun case in the country and find rows of these pistols sitting there with rock-bottom price tags. Number 6. Kel-Tec Sub-2000. Taking the number 6 spot is the Kel-Tec Sub-2000. I am specifically targeting the Gen 2 variant here. For the longest time, this was the ultimate modular survival tool. It was the definitive pistol-caliber carbine to throw in a go bag because it folded perfectly in half and fed from standard Glock magazines. However, Kel-Tec essentially cannibalized their own secondary market by innovating too well with the Gen 3. The newest generation introduced a rotating fore-end mechanism. That seemingly simple upgrade meant you could finally fold the carbine without having to remove your primary red dot sight. Before that, Gen 2 owners were forced to buy clunky, overpriced aftermarket optic mounts just to maintain zero when the gun was stowed. Add in the notoriously aggressive blowback recoil system of the Gen 2, which notoriously slaps the shooter's cheekbone, and you have a heavily outdated platform. Current owners are rapidly trading them away to fund the Gen 3, leaving the older models completely devoid of value. Number 5. TAURUS Judge. Halfway through the list at number 5 is the TAURUS Judge. This oversized wheel gun is the textbook definition of brilliant marketing masking terminal performance. For over a decade, this was heavily pushed as the ultimate vehicle defense weapon. The theory was that a blast of 410 shotgun shells from a pistol would completely devastate an immediate threat. Unfortunately, professional ballistic testing proved otherwise. When you fire a standard birdshot or buckshot load through a short rifled barrel, the pattern completely falls apart. At standard self-defense distances, the shot spread is ridiculously wide, and the penetration depth is dangerously shallow. It is undeniably a fun gun to take to the outdoor berm and blast water jugs with. But when it comes to serious personal protection, it is heavy, it is bulky, and you are limited to only 5 rounds. Once shooters educate themselves on modern ballistics, they trade the Judge in for a proper high-capacity 9mm. Consequently, the used market is completely saturated with them. Number 4. Savage Axis. At number 4, we have to look at the first-generation Savage Axis. For a very long time, this was the absolute undisputed king of the big-box sporting goods stores. I will give Savage credit where it is due. Their barrel manufacturing process is excellent, and these rifles can group incredibly well. But everything else attached to that barrel is incredibly subpar. The original synthetic stock is notoriously flimsy. If you put even a moderate amount of pressure on a bipod, the fore-end flexes enough to make contact with the barrel, destroying your accuracy harmonics. Additionally, the original standard triggers are brutally heavy and inconsistent. In the current 2026 market, an extra $50 buys you a dramatically superior budget rifle from competing manufacturers. Because the retail price on a brand new Axis is already so low, a used one holds absolutely zero margin for a dealer. If you own an original Axis, your best bet is to just keep it as a backup loaner rifle, because a trade-in offer will frankly insult you. Number 3. Glock 43. Coming in at number 3 is the standard Glock 43. Notice I did not say the 43X. I am talking about the original, flush-fit, single-stack model. When Glock finally answered the public's demand for a truly concealable 9mm, this gun sold out everywhere, instantly. But the industry moves fast, and this model aged like milk. The standard factory magazine limits you to a mere 6 rounds. If you are carrying a primary defensive tool in a modern environment, 6 rounds is simply unacceptable. To make the standard 43 viable today, you are forced to buy expensive aftermarket magazine baseplates. But once you add those extensions, the grip length becomes identical to the higher capacity models anyway. It completely defeats the purpose of the gun. Everyone who owned one has already upgraded to the 43X or jumped ship to a different manufacturer entirely. The demand for a 6-shot micro Glock has vanished, and the resale value went with it. Number 2. Springfield XD-M Elite. Sitting at the dreaded number 2 spot is the Springfield XD-M Elite. From a purely mechanical standpoint, this is a phenomenal duty weapon. It runs incredibly clean, the factory match trigger is excellent, and it will chew through any ammunition you feed it. But Springfield completely cratered the value of the entire XD lineup when they released the Echelon. The Echelon is an absolute masterpiece of modern modularity. It utilizes an internal serialized chassis, a drastically reduced bore axis, and it finally eliminated the controversial grip safety. By pushing the Echelon to the forefront, Springfield essentially told the market that the XD platform is old news. The modern tactical shooter looks at the high bore axis and the legacy grip safety of the Elite, and they completely pass it over. Because all the consumer hype is focused on the new chassis system, you can find lightly used Elites selling for a fraction of their original retail price. Number 1. CZ Scorpion Evo 3. And claiming the number 1 spot for the most severe drop in market value, the CZ Scorpion Evo 3. It was not that long ago that this platform was the undisputed heavy hitter of the pistol caliber carbine world. If you did not have a Scorpion in your collection, you were behind the curve. But the fall from grace has been absolutely catastrophic. Part of the blame falls on CZ themselves for releasing the 3 Plus model, which completely redesigned the ergonomics and made the old proprietary magazines obsolete. But the real nail in the coffin is a widespread mechanical defect. The internet has been flooded with documented cases of factory bolts suffering from severe metal peening. This soft metal deforms over time, disables the internal safety block, and leads to extremely dangerous out-of-battery detonations. Even if the failure rate is statistically low, the psychological damage to the platform's reputation is permanent. Educated buyers absolutely refuse to touch a used Scorpion, unless the previous owner has already dropped hundreds of dollars on an aftermarket titanium striker block and a hardened bolt. When you factor in the incredible new competition from platforms like the Grand Power Strybog and the PSAAKV, the original Scorpion has been completely left in the dust. And there you have it, folks. That is the definitive list of platforms that the 2026 market has completely turned its back on. If you are currently shopping for a project gun or a cheap range toy, you are in a prime position to negotiate some incredible deals. But if you are trying to liquidate any of these from your collection, you need to seriously adjust your financial expectations. Now I want to hear from you. Did I leave a severely depreciated gun off this list? Or are you still keeping one of these in your regular rotation despite what the market says? Jump down into the comments and let me know your thoughts. As always, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more uncompromising industry truth, and stay sharp out there.